Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon. Welcome to our Wednesday live edition with Hillcrest Tennis. We are going to be picking up where we left off on Monday with covering the general components that make up a good tennis player, and the components that are key to developing so that you're a well-rounded tennis player. We'll do a little recap of what we discussed on Monday, and then we'll jump right into the final three components that we'll be covering today. So just as a reminder, our little board here. All right, so we've been on Monday we discussed physical, technical, and tactical. Okay, some of and they have subcomponents to those main components, and some of the subcomponents that for me as a coach, I think that I'd like to highlight are the conditioning under physical, the conditioning, nutrition, and flexibility. So that conditioning is key. If we don't have that strong conditioning foundation, then we can't last out on the tennis court. And so that's one of our sound fundamentals that we need to have down. If we're not physically fit and if we're not in good physical condition, it's very difficult for us to compete at a high level, and then also you're not effective on the court. Nutrition is another one that I think is not focused on as much. If we're not fueling our body, and if we're not doing the things before we go out onto the court, then we're not going to be effective or successful. So keeping that in mind as you if you're playing in league, if you're playing in tournaments, or even if you're coming out to practice, making sure that you're fueling and you're hydrating correctly so that you can get the most out of your competition and out of your practice. And then flexibility, specifically for adults. If we're not stretching, if we're not doing those range of motions that will allow our body to move efficiently and effectively, then injury becomes an issue, and then also we're not maximizing our potential in regards to our physical abilities. Okay, so moving on to the technical, just a little recap on that. Some of the components that I think are key to that are the tracking skills. So being able to see the ball at an earlier point off of your opponent's racket so that you can prepare earlier. The earlier you can prepare, the more effective you're going to be with your shot selection, with your fundamentals. If you're not preparing correctly and with enough time, now you limit yourself to your abilities to hit the correct shot, hit to the correct place with the correct spin, power, whatever it is. So it's key to track that ball early and see it before it bounces on your side of the court so that you can prepare. And then those shot fundamentals, we discussed the 5 components of the shot, which is, the split step, and then you see the ball. That's your tracking. So you split, and then you're seeing the ball, and they're basically the same thing. So you're splitting as your opponent hits, and you're seeing that ball off of their racket. And then you're going to turn, move, hit, recover, and then you link it to that next split. See the ball, turn, move, hit, or see the ball, turn, move, hit, recover, and then you link. And that's it. The more we can link shots together, now we're moving in the right direction in regards to more shots we link together, more points we win, more games, sets, and then hopefully the match. So if we're linking those shot fundamentals together, it's going to help our tactical aspect of our game. And then the final one with technical movement and footwork, and that all links with our conditioning and our flexibility. If it's the foundation. If we're not, the environment in tennis is constantly changing. So the ball is never going to be in the same place twice. So the key is to, be in position to hit the correct shot to the correct spot. And if we're not moving and we're not getting into position to hit the correct shot or getting into position so that we're on time with our contact, now we're going to be ineffective and unsuccessful. All right. So now we're going to be moving on to the technical, just as a review. Tactical. Tactical is the means in which you carry out a specific match strategy and or overall game plan. So we're talking about consistency, patterns of play, and your shot selection. So those things, those are all tactical, and this will be a good segue into our 3 topics that we'll be discussing today. The consistency is being in position to hit the correct shot to the correct spot, and then reviewing, if we can stay in the point 0 to 4 shots, our percentage of winning the point goes up 90%. All right. So, and then we discuss patterns of play. It's, isolating an opponent's weakness, capitalizing on short balls, those kinds of things. Those are patterns of play. Cross court, down the line, changing direction, getting your opponent off balance, and then taking advantage of that shorter ball. Okay, and then our shot selection, being aware, being in tune with that each incoming ball is different. It's like I said, nothing is ever the same. So the environment is constantly changing, and so we have to be emotionally and intellectually aware of what's going on, so that we're making the correct shot selection, so that we can then be effective with our strategy. All right, so now we're moving into that. We're going to segue into that with strategy, and we're going to discuss a little bit. Let me get my papers here. Okay, so we're talking about, when we talk about strategy, it's our tactics. When you go into a match, you have a general idea as to what your game plan is, but you're really, so here we go. So the strategy is a combination of tactics. Okay, so you don't necessarily come in with just one strategy. You don't come in with just one tactic. That it has to be a combination of things. You're typically you have, at the very minimum, 2 tactics that you're going in with your match. So we're talking about repetition, recognizing your strengths, your opponent's strengths. You're recognizing game styles. What is your game style in relationship to your opponent? And then then we're discussing surfaces, game situations, what the weather is like, what's the environment like outside, if you're inside, We'll discuss that, and then match situations, tournament situations, those kinds of things. Because all of these need to be considered, because sometimes our strategy has to be changed, and and again, the environment is constantly changing, so we have to be flexible, and we have to recognize when those environments change. To give an example, a strategy would be serving a volley, or running your opponent until they get tired, or attacking the weaker side. But you really have to adjust with styles of play, because sometimes your opponent is in the first set, they're not on, but they're not on with their backhand, for example, and then all of a sudden it changes and they're starting to groove on it, and now your game plan that you went in to try and attack that weaker side, or the side that they're not as confident on, now you have to recognize that they're starting to feel it a little bit, and so we have to make that change. And so you have to go in thinking with that, yes, you have your plan A, but maybe you have to move to plan C. And so we have to adjust as that environment changes. But really, so we're recognizing, when we talk about strategy, when you're creating a game plan, when you're creating that strategy, you've got to know who you're playing, and if you don't, that's totally fine. You go in recognizing what your strengths are, what your game style is, and you play to your strengths. And you'll start to feel it, and you'll start to recognize it as you play, but you have to be conscious about it. You have to be aware of what's going on the court. It can't just be mindless tennis. We have to be completely engaged 100% of the time, and that's going to segue into our mental aspect of things. But you're recognizing what is the match situation, what's the score, are you playing the score, are you aware of what, if you're playing doubles, are you aware what your partner is, how they're feeling, how they're playing that day. And you have to be aware of all of these things, because that will help you make the adjustments that you need within your game plan. And we talk about tournament situations, when we just, in that regard, we're talking about league. There's, everybody plays well up to that match day situation, and then we get a little bit stressed, we get a little bit frazzled, and so we have to recognize that, and then going in, making those adjustments. If you're feeling a little nervous, okay, what do we need to do? Play a little bit more conservatively, find yourself a groove, and then you can start to move into your game plan and into your strategy. But anyway, so those kinds of things, we're really looking to, when you make that game plan, make sure that you have minimum 2 tactical components to it. Smart shot selection, your power, your spin. You've got to use a mix of all of those things in order to be effective and successful, to winning points. And then also, a strategy that you can have is